Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Welcome back to Beyond the Pain, Heart and Home Healing After Loss. I am really excited about this episode because I feel like we are going to dig into some really deep and nitty-gritty details that for most people might make them a little bit uncomfortable. But for people like myself and this amazing guest I have here with me today, it is very much our real lives. Joining me here today, I have someone who has built who's built a large social media presence because of her courage to tell her story. She's built a large community of women who are grieving, specifically in the baby loss world. She's actually one of the very first people I ever found on social media after I lost my baby. And I think my favorite thing about her account and just her in general is she just has no filter and no shame to say what she's thinking.
Nah.
No, if you're listening to this right now, chances are you've lost a baby or lost somebody, and you've probably had thoughts in your head that are like, yikes, I probably shouldn't say this out loud to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you that both she and I have had the same thoughts, and not only that, I can almost guarantee you that she has either said it out loud on Instagram or her podcast, which is why I love her so much. She makes you feel so seen and totally normal, and nothing is off limits to talk about out loud. And that is why I have her on here today. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Katherine Lazar here today. Katherine, thank you so much for agreeing to be here and chat with me today.
What an intro. Oh, I got a lot to live up to, girl. Girl, thanks for having me. Congratulations on the new podcast. It's a big move.
Thank you.
Feels real good, I know. People are kind of probably like, why do these chicks keep wanting to talk about this stuff? Hey, listen, this is when we get to talk about our babies. This is how we parent them. This is how we help others. And some of us feel called to do it in a bigger way than others, and larger, louder way. And some don't. And that's okay too. So this is where we're at now. So congrats on it, girl. Nice work.
Thank you so much. No,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. That was one of the biggest things. I was like, I have so much to say. I feel like I need to speak up for the women who are doing this alone, who feel like they have to do this in silence. And like I said in the beginning, you were the first person that I found that I was like, she's saying what I'm thinking, And, and it's really, really important to find people that you can connect with, like that, especially in the beginning where you just feel so alone. And so, it was very important to me to do this, and I have so much that I want to share, and we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, man.
But before we get into anything too crazy or deep about everything that we're going to talk about, I want to give you the opportunity to share with everyone your experience and why you have first-hand knowledge on all things grief, baby loss, and specifically today, stillbirth. So why don't you start by telling us your story about, who you lost, how, all those things.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just so everybody knows that when I talk, it's coming from a place of having 1,000 conversations with people in the loss space. It's a lot of doctors. It's a lot of lost mom conversations. It's a lot of research. It's a lot of mental health therapist conversations. So everything that I come from is backed by pure experience. Let's just put it that way. So how this all started. So my husband and I, the love of my life, we live in Atlanta, Georgia, and we were expecting our first child, a son named Brody, in the summer of 2021. It was a very easy pregnancy, very smooth. Nothing was going on, nothing crazy, no high alerts, nothing. And to be honest, my OBGYNs were basically like, or my OBs, were like, hey, you're great. Get out. Why are you asking all these questions? That was kind of the vibe. And it was a rotating practice. So I had to see a different doctor every single time I went in there, which you kind of liked because you could get different insight, but you never really got attached to anybody who was keeping up with you. My blood pressure did start to go up a little bit, and they were monitoring it. And they were saying those things like, oh, if you have a blinding headache, that doesn't go away with medication. If you're seeing spots and stuff like that, none of that happened. I mean, I was pregnant. I was uncomfortable, towards the end of it. Brody was a wonderful baby. He loved strawberries. He would kick around. We'd have breakfast together every morning, a bowl of cereal, sometimes 2 or 3, whatever, pregnancy. He was wonderful. We were so excited. We had the nursery. We were planning his little life. He had a pediatrician waiting for him. He had little cousins that lived down the street that we just envisioned them growing up together. And Michael, my husband, and I were just very, very excited to become parents. And towards the end of the pregnancy, around 37 weeks, I went in for just a routine, and they measured my belly with the measuring tape, and they said, you're measuring small for his age. So they threw me in an ultrasound really quickly. The ultrasound tech was like, you're fine. Heart rate looks good. Baby's fine. I had noticed that morning, because I was doing kick counts. They told me to pay attention to movement, but they weren't very specific about it. And every single time I would ask questions throughout my pregnancy, it was kind of dismissive, almost, what are you so afraid of? You're perfectly healthy. It could be worse. Like you could have something wrong with you, but you don't. So be grateful and go home. And that's essentially what the vibe was. And I was extremely grateful because I was like a very nervous pregnant mama. I was doing all the right things. I didn't polish my nails. I didn't get my hair done. I changed all my skincare and my makeup. I changed everything that I was putting in my body. I was reading labels and I was just doing everything I could to keep him safe. I was a fitness professional working in the fitness space, and I would work out, but I toned down my workouts. Like I did everything that I should have been doing that I know of. Staying away from deli meat and sushi and just playing by the rules. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. And, I was grateful. And when they told me he was fine at that appointment, I was super happy. That morning, I remember he was taking a little bit longer to respond to the kick counting. He hit his 10 kicks, but I noticed they weren't I used to call him Cirque du Soleil. He would perform all the time, just bouncing around, kicking, punching. That morning, there was a particular app that I was following, popped up and said, well, congratulations. You may be feeling a certain amount of movement, but it's going to be different now. It's more like rolls instead of punches. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's what I'm kind of feeling. So, okay, no big deal. Everyone around me had already had 2-3 babies. So everybody that I asked was like, oh yeah, they just kind of run out of space. It's, it's going to feel different. It's like, okay. So I went in there not thinking anything of it. And then when they told me that the ultrasound, he looked great, I was like, cool. Woo. All right, good. Peace out. I'm leaving. Thank God he's okay. You guys scared me for a second. They did say to me, if your blood pressure keeps going up, we're going to induce you in the next week or 2. And I was like, what? How do you casually just say that? And they're like, we'll talk about it, but like, just know. And I'm like, oh, well, that's weird. Okay. But no one really told me why. Like, how bad is my blood pressure? What's going on here? I guess my point is that it was very casual. And so 3 days go by or so, and I woke up one morning and I was like, I don't feel him at all, nothing. And I felt, this is horrendous, and oh God, the only reason I'm going to say it is because if I despise this so much, then maybe someone else needs to hear it. I did feel him, but not in the normal way, and now I know what that was, and it's horrifying. Nobody talks about that part. I went in, I called them, I said, I don't feel him, and they said, well, why don't you just come in? We'll check you out. And I sat in the waiting room, and it was COVID time, kind of. They were still doing that whole, I got yelled at for not wearing my mask. I'm like, I can't breathe. Like, I'm huge, So I was already irritated with them. And then I went in, put me in the ultrasound, and the tech, basically was like, what are you doing here? I just saw you. And, you guys know the story. Essentially, they put the ultrasound on him, and I looked, and where the flicker normally is was not there. And they said those god-awful words that stick with almost every single one of us is, oh my God, I can't find the heartbeat. There's no heartbeat. And I was like, what? look again, it was one of those things. And to spare y'all of the graphic detail of what ensued, my husband was not with me, adding to the trauma. Why don't we? Because they had some stupid rules, and he was in the car, and I had to call him to come up, and then I had to watch them tell him that our baby was dead. The only thing I could do was scream, "I'm sorry, I killed him." And so these are important things to note, because every single one of us, I think, the second we're told our baby is dead, we blame ourselves. What did I eat? What did I do? Was the shower too hot? Did I run too fast? He hiccuped the other day. Was that bad? I accidentally bumped my belly on the corner of the island in the kitchen. Is that bad? Did I do it? Is that what did it? What happened? What's going, and you just think it's you, because you don't know that you were not informed that this was a potential outcome of 1 in 160 pregnancies. And you had no clue that there's certain things going on in your body that could happen that could kill your baby. Okay. When people say, "I lost my baby to stillbirth," that is completely inaccurate. Stillbirth doesn't kill your baby. Stillbirth is the result of the death of your baby caused by something. I didn't know any of this. So they walk me to the office in there. I'm still thinking I did this. I've left my body. I'm in complete shock. I don't even know. It feels like I'm underwater in a tunnel. And she hands me a pamphlet and she's like, "You have to go to the hospital and get induced." I don't know about y'all, but I was completely stunned. Had no idea that I had to now deliver. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I was like, wait. I have to do what? I guess my brain had not moved on to the next steps yet. My soul was still in that room where he should be. So I went home because I had to wait for a hospital bed. I had to wait 8 hours sitting at home. I don't even know what I did for those 8 hours. It was horrific. My mom and my sister came over. I had to tell them what happened. Seeing their reaction will stick with me for the rest of my life. So anybody who had to break the news to somebody in person, seeing them devastated is also another part of this whole thing. I ended up getting to the hospital. They induced me. They put my medication on steroids just so we could get him out soon. That induced a lot of sickness, vomiting, and I was beside myself. I didn't know what was happening, and, morphine to make me calm down, that sort of thing. So I talked to him that night. I remembered this recently. I talked to him that night, but I already knew he was gone. But then a piece of you kind of feels maybe they will show up alive. Maybe there's been a huge mistake. And the next team came in to deliver the baby. They say that, "I'm here to deliver the baby." His name's, this is our baby. This is our child, your baby, your son. They delivered him. I pushed 9 times, and I don't know about anybody else, but that 9th time, I knew it was the last push, and I did not want to push. I did not want to push. I refused to push. I said, I don't want to push. It's over if I push. Our time together would be over. And they said, "Katherine, you have to push." So I did, and out came this beautiful little boy that we named Brody Michael after his dad. And then, they whisked him away because they assumed I didn't want to see him. Part of me didn't, because I didn't know what to expect. Nobody really prepped me for, this is what he might look like. This is, he's still your baby. You're going to want to hold him. So I freaked out, and I was like, oh my God, what? I don't know. I'm afraid to look. So they took him away. And, they bathed him. I didn't get to bathe him. I regret it so much. They put a little hat on him. I was so afraid. I never saw his hair. His skin, I'm going to be completely honest. You guys know I don't hide shit from you. His skin had ripped, as most stillborns do. Stillborn babies do. I don't call them stillborns. They're a baby that was stillborn. The lack of oxygen and blood flow causes their skin to be super soft, and especially if you do a vaginal birth, it does tear their skin. It's a horrific thing to see. Not many people talk about that. and you want to like take in how they look because you want to remember it forever, but also you don't because it doesn't look like your baby because they are gone and they look like they're gone, especially if it's been at least 10, 12 hours after they've passed. If it's immediate, like if they die during birth, they probably look very, very normal. Then here comes the questions. Like, do you want a funeral? Do you want a cremation? Do you want this? Do you want that? And it's like, what? I have no idea, but you have to make that decision because you can't leave the hospital. Like they won't take him until you leave. So you have to make all these decisions before discharge. At the time, and I'm so incredibly thankful for this, my sister reached out to two people that she knew had kind of experienced this, and they were giving her information. Make sure she takes pictures. Make sure she has an outfit for them. Make sure you have the stuffies there. Make sure that you do this. Make sure you do that. Do the baptism if you want to, like all this stuff. So she was like, you have to accept that this is happening, and we have to figure out the best things to do while you're in this hospital for this short amount of time. So we did, thank God. Pictures and video. It'll never be enough. Never, ever, ever be enough. And we'll always be stuck in that time. But I do have photos and video that I'm incredibly happy that I have. Our priest came to baptize him. I mean, I'm not even going to get into it, but I end up hemorrhaging. I went into, I always say this wrong, but disseminate intravascular coagulation, meaning my body stopped coagulating. Which is wild. And blood started pouring out of anything that was a needle, and where I gave birth. So I lost 70% of my blood capacity, had 2 transfusions, was allergic to the blood, like the whole 9, had me upside down. I lost my voice. I couldn't scream or tell anybody what was happening because my voice was being flooded by the fluids they were pumping me with. It was downright out of a movie, like nightmare style. They ended up taking me to emergency surgery to stop the bleeding or take my uterus if they had to. I just remember screaming, please don't take my uterus. I have to be able to do this again. I have to, my son's dead. My son's dead. Just like, that's all you can think of is like, I have to be able to try this again. Like he's gone. What am I going to do? My only son was gone. And they were like, if we don't do this, you will die. We have to make a decision on the table. You have to sign right now that we could take your uterus if we have to. I couldn't do it, so I made my husband sign it. I'm like trying to negotiate. I'm like, listen, doc, if you get on that table and I'm bleeding and you have to take my uterus, wake me up and we're talking about this. And she looked at me in my face. She's like, are you crazy? No, I'm going to save your life if that's the thing. I'm okay, cool, whatever. It was horrible. And then, so they ended up saving it. I still think some massive damage was done. Because my subsequent pregnancies I just think it was completely overlooked what happened in that operating room. But they did save my life, and I'm forever grateful for that doctor that was on call. She never saw me during my pregnancy. She was a complete third party. So, you just, I went to the ICU. I woke up and Brody was at the morgue. And they asked me if I wanted him. And I was like, I don't want my sweet angel baby here with all these machines and this. Where am I? It was like the pits of hell. It was weird. It was dark. It was horrible. And by the time I got out of the ICU, I asked for him. And he had, he was a little block of ice. He was gone. He was gone. It was horrible to see. We got to say our goodbyes. And pretty much the reason why we're having this conversation is because I looked at him and I promised him that I would keep his name alive by helping the mamas of his angel buddies that were stuck here on earth after they left us. And that's what I do. I parent him in this way by talking about it and helping others feel less alone, just as you are. So, it's not an easy thing to do, but I feel called to, and I made that promise to him. And the nurse came in and I said, you're going to have to take him for me. I cannot hand him over. You're going to have to take him. She kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But I said, I am not handing him over. And she just said, okay. And she took him from me and put him in the little thing. And that was the last time I saw him. And he, yeah. And so we walked out. And then that's where the next phase comes. It's the next phase. It's the now what? It's the silent home, the empty nursery. It's the onslaught of food and you're not even hungry. It's the medications you're on. You know, they pumped me full of antidepressants and I was like, I don't even know what I'm taking right now. My blood pressure was through the roof, so I was on that too. I had preeclampsia after. You know, there's so many details, you guys, and the only reason I really tell you this is in case you pick a little nugget up and you're like, oh, that happened to me too. You know, that's really why I divulge so much. And then came the healing part. And I will preface with this. I don't feel we completely heal from the death of our babies, but I do feel there's parts of us that can heal. And there's parts that we will be working on for the rest of our lives. But the healing process to me is definitely a thing. And I woke up a few days later and I'm like, I don't know how to exist. I don't know. What is this? You know, what do I do? And so I started asking a ton of questions. Meanwhile, doctors are like, oh, this is like lightning being struck. This never happens. It's super rare. I'm like, oh, well, you're looking at someone it happened to. What the hell, man? Clearly, it's not impossible. So I started asking a ton of questions. And I sought out, you know, I sent his placenta off to an expert, a third-party expert, and he gave me some insight. Speculating. I mean, not really speculating, but like no one will pinpoint what happened to Brody. But you know, testing came back and said cause of death could have been, I found out I had a blood clotting disorder. Didn't know I had that. Okay. Means I should have been on blood thinners during my pregnancy, but they don't test unless you have a loss. Are you freaking kidding me? Great. Cool. Here we are. Small placenta, second percentile placenta, and it looks like a cord compression happened. So he died of a cord compression before his placenta could fail. What? Like when I started hearing this, I'm like, what are you talking about? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I went down a rabbit hole of questions. What the hell does this mean? What are you talking about? And so I had so many conversations, and getting those answers helped me release some blame, but I still have a ton that I carry all the time. And then it helped me in my subsequent pregnancies. I do have 2 living babies since Brody passed. But how we got here is I found comfort in having conversations with lost mamas. That community is the greatest thing. And I leaned into that community. I leaned into my grief. I did the dirty work. I got a therapist immediately. And I swore I would try to do something good with his death. Not that his death happened so I could do good. No. He did not happen for a reason. Don't ever say that to one of us. You get popped. Mm-hmm. But I can turn it into something that can help. And that's what I try to do. So we got here because I am honestly, I mean, I'm a coach by nature, a fitness professional, and I just feel very called to do this. So here we are, and his 3rd birthday is about to approach. Time flies when you're spiraling, yeah, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. My first episode that I released was my story. Basically, like just what you told, you know. I added a little bit more before that about a little bit of my upbringing, because the reason I wanted to have a baby so badly, and you know, we brought 3 non-biological kids into our lives, like that whole everything kind of tied together. So I added a little bit more like with the upbringing side, but recording that episode was exhausting. And then listening back to it is exhausting. I mean, I felt like I was reliving it all over again. So the story, it gets a little bit easier to tell and a little bit easier, I guess, to hear, but they're still not easy to hear. Even hearing your story, like, I feel like there were so many, I can't tell you how many things in your story I can relate to, like copy and paste everything except my life was not threatened at any point. But everything else, from having, you're good, why are you here? Why are you getting checked? Go home, you know, to my husband not being with me, to like just all of the things, like copy and paste, like your story. And so I know how hard it is to tell. But it's really important to tell because it allows other women to go, like you said, it gives them those tiny little nuggets of like, yo, yeah, me too. Like, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only person who has done this, you know? And I think it's interesting that you had somebody, or that your sister knew somebody that had experience, because, and from my experience, my personal experience, and most of the women I've met in this community haven't had somebody in their life who have had a stillbirth. you know,
Yeah. It was her friend's best friend who she remembered hearing it, like,
okay.
and then another best friend remembered seeing a post on a Facebook page. So like this is why I tell moms, like lost mamas, like tell your story, because you never
Yeah.
know who is going to remember it for later and help another mom. That's exactly what happened. My friend remembered the post from 2 years prior, was like, "Oh my God, somebody posted this in one of the mom groups." And she searched
Wow.
for it and then contacted that mom and was like, "My friend's going through this right now. What do I do?" And then now I'm like really good friends with this mom and here in Atlanta. So like nobody really knows anybody. But if you tell your story, you're the first person they go to if they ever do, unfortunately, know somebody.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because like I said, my experience was like nobody around me.
Never even,
Even
I thought stillbirth happened if you had like in a car accident or like blunt force
Right.
trauma or you did hardcore drugs. Do you know what the
Right.
text said to me after she told me Brody had died? She hugged me and she goes, "You could have smoked crack and this would not have happened." What? Nice parting words.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
still sticks with me.
Yeah.
You should have done the
Yeah.
crack then. Jesus. Like
Right.
I wasn't even eating sandwiches. Like I don't
Right.
I don't know.
And that's actually I remember that too. One of the first things that, gosh, maybe maybe it was the doctor said, like, this was not you. Like, you didn't do this. You didn't eat anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Like, that was one of the first things out of her mouth after I'm sorry.
She did say that. She was like, "This, you did not do this." Well, then my head was
did?
like, "What?" Then what did? Yeah. And
Right.
you know those words, "There's no heartbeat." I was like, "So get him out and get the heartbeat back. What are you doing? Let's move."
Right.
And they were like, "That's
Right.
not how this works." Like the way in which things are handled is mind-boggling. Any other death would never be handled that way. I mean, there's no information.
There's no information, and there's no information. Like you had mentioned, you are counting the kicks. As a first-time mom, this was my first pregnancy. I had never even heard of that. Not even heard a word of it. I heard of count the kicks after Layla died.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, well, that's not helpful. And that was very much a part of my story. Like it was that slow, it was like that, lessened movement, and it went from less punching to rolling. And I got all of they run out of room, you're lulling them to sleep, and whatever those things were. And as a first time mom, like, unless your doctor looks at you and go, no matter how healthy you are, because I had a perfectly healthy pregnancy just like you, no matter how healthy you are, they don't say anything. They don't say, no matter how healthy you are, you should still be counting the kicks. Well,
Yeah.
where is that information? Like, what good is it to me after the fact?
Yeah.
Why am
and
I
it should
finding
be
this out after?
And it's not even just counting the kicks. It should be at the same time ish and the same intensity and style that your baby is. It should be your baby's kicks, like not just 10, and it's not 10 every 5 hours. It's if you have not felt your baby in an hour or two, something's up. Especially if you know how your baby's wild at 6 p.m. when you sit and watch Family Feud. That's me. You have your first cup of coffee and your baby does flips. Like if that's not happening, you need to investigate. And that's where they got me. If they had just asked, how are his movements this morning? And I said, weak, I don't know what they would have done. I don't know. I feel like maybe nothing, but I regret every day not saying something, But to me, I was like, this shouldn't be a big deal. He hit his kick counts. They were just weaker than normal. And that's what we have to pay attention to. If it doesn't feel like your baby, you need to investigate that and go the hell into the hospital.
Absolutely. And you didn't really expound on the details, and you don't have to, but you had mentioned that you noticed that you had felt him, but it wasn't the same. Exact same, which is why, as a very ignorant first time pregnant mom, I was like, I feel her.
Yeah,
I feel her. And it wasn't until we just so happened to have She was a nurse. She wasn't really a doula, but she was kind of training me as if she was going to be there with me in the room, like she was a doula. She was I believe, an L&D nurse, like back in the day. She's very knowledgeable in all things laboring, birthing, delivering. And so she was prepping me for weeks. We were paying her to come and kind of, just prep us. And that morning, the morning that I found out that she had died, she's the one who was like, you need to call the doctor. Like, nobody else said this other than her. And thank God I had that, because my due date was days away. And God forbid my body went into labor naturally, and she would have been stillborn and I would have had no idea. And that is the one thing, if I have anything to be grateful for, that I am the most grateful for, is that I knew ahead of time. Not because it would make it any less terrible or tragic or anything, but I mean,
yeah,
I'm glad I knew.
Yeah, it's definitely,
and it was
a different
only
layer.
because of her.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
that feeling is they were floating, and it's it's probably one of the most horrific parts of this, that I don't think people, outsiders, get. They don't get the layers of trauma. They don't understand that. And especially with stillbirth. Oh, my aunt had like 6 of those. No, that's not a stillbirth. That's not, she didn't have 6 stillbirths. And look, loss is loss. Absolutely. And it's devastating and earth shattering and soul breaking. Absolutely. No matter what it is, no matter what kind of loss. But there's such a misconception with stillbirth that the baby just disappears, or it just falls out, or what. People don't know that we give birth, or we have a C-section, or we deliver. I just say deliver. People don't get that. Even doctors. Like I've had some crazy conversations, like, oh yeah, she had to do what? I'm like, shit, man. There is so much lack of information. It's insane.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's, you go home, you just have this insanely traumatic event, and you go home, and not only are you dealing with the trauma and the emotions and everything, but your body is healing from birth.
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest things that we are robbed of, is we are robbed of how do I word this? The world knowing and remembering our bodies bouncing back from giving birth. When the mother has a baby in her arms, everybody knows she's recovering from birth and from all the hormonal swings and all of the things that she just went to. When you're holding the baby, everybody knows of what she went through. But one of the biggest things we are robbed of with a stillbirth is it immediately becomes about our loss and our recovery, and all of the things that our physical bodies just went through is almost completely forgotten about. And that is a huge part of stillbirth. We still, that expression is so cheesy, but it's so true. We still gave birth. Like we did, whether it was vaginal, a C-section, like whatever it was, our bodies are still, recovering. And we were robbed of all of those things. And one of the things I want to talk about is how stillbirth strips you from all innocence of what having babies is like. Now, you no longer picture yourself getting pregnant, having the baby and raising them like you always have in your past, and like everybody else on the planet, and at least that's what it seems like in your head. You no longer view having a baby like anybody else in your world does. And I want to talk about something kind of specific, for me and for you too. My first baby that I ever had was the one that died. So not only did her death make me miss her, like simply because I just loved her so much, prior to having her, I also just had a deep longing for a baby, like any baby. So before I knew her specifically, I just wanted a freaking baby, like that was my thought process. So when she died, not only did I lose her, but I also lost that dream I had of ever having a baby that I wanted for so long. Yeah. But I would imagine that maybe it's probably a little bit different if it's the second, the third, fourth, etc. child is the one that's stillborn. And of course, I'm not suggesting that any child is replaceable. I am fully aware that living babies don't replace dead babies, because I know if I had another baby tomorrow, I would still miss Layla just as much, and they wouldn't never take her place. But, because every child is deeply grieved, no matter what order, the death falls in.
Right.
But when all you want is a baby and your first one dies, like, you grieve any sort of innocence you ever had for what having a baby is or was supposed to feel like. And I would imagine it's not as strong of a feeling if you had a stillbirth that wasn't your first. I don't know. You or I will never really know that specifically, because for us it was our first. But I'm curious for you, since Brody died, you have had 2 living babies, like you said. So now that you've had 2 successfully born living children, like, this is going to sound funny, but is any of that innocence, like, back? Like,
no.
Was your third pregnancy easier than your second because you knew you were capable of having a living baby?
No, it's completely gone. It's completely gone. And full disclosure, like, I'm not pregnant right now, and I see a pregnant woman, and I'm like, I hate you. You have, and I don't hate because she's pregnant. I don't hate the baby. Oh my God, I don't even hate her. I'm just being, dramatic.
Right.
But it's more of like, you have your innocence and mine is gone. You have no clue what can happen to you. The most beautiful thing that God could give a human being, to have a child, and it's the most horrific thing that's ever happened to us. And beautiful. It's the biggest dichotomy that just messes with your brain. But we know exactly what can happen. We no longer trust. That's the thing. It robbed us of our trust in medical professionals, our trust in our own gut instincts, and maybe even trust in God, maybe trust in our faith. Because, you're going about life thinking, oh, I'm really good. Good things are going to happen to me, And next thing you know, bam, you're the one in 160, the 1 in 4, the 1 in 200,000, the 1 in whatever it is, you're the one. And you don't see it coming. And then so from people who aren't robbed of that or don't know this kind of pain, you envy them. You're just, I wish I could go back to that. I wish I just still had my innocence. But I don't have it back. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I don't have it back, and I don't see myself ever having it back. Even now these babies are growing up, my babies are growing up, I still am looking at them like, what else can happen next? It's you're always going to be the one in your mind. And I've really been working hard to keep intrusive thoughts at bay. Intrusive thoughts can really, really make you spiral. And they're a thing. People use them. I hate when people use things like, I have anxiety, I have intrusive thoughts, I'm depressed, when you're really not. Like, you don't know it until you go through something like this, where you're like, that's an intrusive thought. And it is a nasty, ugly, dark that you can't shake, that just kind of rattles you. And I'm getting better at those. Those get better. And I think a lot of first-time moms take away the trauma and the grief and the loss. Like, of course, they're going to have intrusive thoughts. But ours are kind of like, at least for me, next level, where usually an intrusive thought is, oh, that could never happen. For me, it's, how do I keep this from happening? It's like that. So I don't know about you. I mean, how do you feel when you see a pregnant belly? Do you want to, like, shake them and be like, oh my God, count the kicks, or like hug them? Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah. So that's, yeah. I've been around a lot of pregnant people since, in person and online. And the thing is it depends on the person. So I'll use this as an example. My sister just had a baby. And my sister is one of the only people who have literally been by my side, walked through every flame of hell that I walked through, literally right next to me. And so when she got pregnant and had her pregnancy, it was kind of like an unspoken, and still to this day, we haven't really talked about all of the fears that we both know that both her and I were having the entire pregnancy. She was literally in the delivery room with me when Layla was born. She helped swaddle Layla after she was born. Like, she walked through the pits of hell. So when it's somebody like that, it's like, any thought that I'm having, I'm having it. You're probably having it too.
Yeah.
And you know so intimately what I've experienced. I don't even have to explain. And throughout her entire pregnancy, she would always remind me, I just want you to know that I know what this is for you. I love you. I appreciate, I threw her a baby sprinkle literally in my living room. And it was my joy and honor to do that for her because she's somebody who her innocence was lost because of my experience.
Yeah.
So for somebody like that.
Well, yeah, she's got a front row seat to this, she knows exactly what's up. Yeah. And that's different. That's a good, I'm glad you guys made it through her pregnancy after your loss. Yeah. That's tough.
And we're close. And I know I'm very grateful for that. Like not many sisters have the kind of bond that we do. I mean, you don't grow a bond with somebody like we do unless you go through things that we've gone through. You know what I mean? As far as other people, it's hard. It's but I try. I easily can become very bitter, and I try not to allow myself, like you just said, like our immediate thought is like, be careful, count your kicks. I'm so jealous. I want to punch you. Like all the things like in your head. You know what I mean? Like they come one by one by one. They all come into your head. And so I let them through and then I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Their life has nothing to do with mine. I'm not going to let that pregnant person who has literally no idea the craziness that's going on inside my head right now allow me to spiral.
Well,
when I've worked
did you
so hard.
Spiral in the very beginning? I mean, I spiraled if one like walked into my workout class. Not spiral, but like you could feel your heart racing a little bit. You kind of feel sick to your stomach, like, oh God, like I can't look at this right now. Like I went into a yoga class just like right after Brody died, and I sat in the middle. I was late, and the instructor was late. She comes in. I turn around. She's like 7 months pregnant. The instructor, and I was like, I gotta look at this. But, and you could feel like your heart pumping. It's just trauma. It's a trauma reaction. Now exactly. I see them in my class. I'm like, good luck with that. Yeah. Godspeed, Jesus, take the wheel, I pray for you. I hope everything turns out okay. It's not a thing anymore, but you can't help but think, damn, like I wish I didn't know what could go down.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yes, that's a great point. What I feel now is definitely very different than what I felt before. I avoided pregnant people and children like the plague.
Oh, yeah.
Small children like the plague when I was first. But honestly, like it was out of protection for my heart. Like I like you said, like my heart would race. I couldn't breathe. Like it's the trauma response. It's the PTSD. It's the memory of holding the dead baby in my arm. Like when I literally can't see your baby without thinking of my dead baby, so it's like, I got to protect myself. Like this isn't personal against you. Like if I want to sleep tonight, like I need to stay away from you right now, And so it was more like that. It was less about them and it was more about like protecting my PTSD.
Well, not to mention biologically, your body thinks it had a baby. Your body doesn't know your baby's gone. So the sound of any baby crying, your milk comes in, your body tingles, your cortisol levels spike. You are rushing to save this, whoever's baby this is, because your body still thinks you have one. You're waking up in the night thinking your body thinks it's got to feed the baby. Like you are triggered by something that your body is physically missing. And that is a biological thing, and it does go away with time and it gets better. And then, I don't know if anybody's like me, I kind of threw myself into it. Like I would go out and I would go to bars and restaurants and shops and try to desensitize myself to it once I got out of the postpartum phase. Postpartum is like 3 months or so. Like it is, your hormones are spiked and things are going crazy and your milk is trying to dry up. And it's a visceral biological reaction to the sight of a baby that your body thinks is missing. No, it doesn't know it's missing. It's just, it wants it. Yeah. It's insane.
Right, exactly. Yes. And that's a good point. And gosh, I haven't spoken to anybody about that. I've had all these thoughts other than like, my mom, but nobody says that, what you just said. Nobody brings that to the table. And that's one of the hardest things. One of the hardest layers of this is like, I'm now looked at, because I don't want to say we hid. We didn't hide. We protected ourselves, like I was just saying, a lot early on. And the stigma from the typical outsider or whatever, the person viewing in is like, where have they been? They disappeared. And it's like, I don't know how to describe this to you. I can't describe this to you. I unless you were literally right next to me while I was pushing, I can't take my experience and put it into your brain. And this is a perfect segue, because this is one of the things I want to ask you, or I want to talk about, because you're the first person who I ever heard use this term. And I don't even know if you came up with it, but like I said, you're the first person I ever heard use it, and that's lost lens. And I'll come right out and say it. I can almost immediately tell from talking to someone if they're wearing a lost lens or not. Like, yeah. And it's not a bad thing if they're not. Okay, it used to make me very bitter. Like, I would roll my eyes and go like, you just don't get it. But now I realize, like, it's a part of life. Like, neither party, asked for this. They didn't ask for me to wear this lens. I certainly didn't ask to be wearing it. And for most of my life, I wasn't wearing it either. I was very lucky. And so I really try to give people grace, on that, and remind myself that of my ignorant days that I used to live in. But it's a really important term for us grievous to learn. And so I just want to talk about, like, what a lost lens is. I have an analogy that I want to use, but I want to hear it out of your mouth, because you're the person that I heard talk about this for the very first time. Like, what is it? What's a lost lens?
Yeah. So you have a lens on life. Everybody has a way of looking at things, the way they perceive things, the way they process things when they see it. Information or events or communications, whatever it is. For us, once you experience the death of your child, it seems like everything then comes through a loss lens, meaning you perceive everything from the foundation of loss. And not necessarily in a bad way, but the perspective that you have is now altered, a different perspective than you had prior to the loss. Because now the loss has affected how you see things, how you perceive things, how you envision things, how you expect your outlook on everything changes, because now you see it through the eyes of somebody who has lost something so significant to them. Now, at first, I only wanted to speak to people who also had a lost lens, not just a lost lens, term stillbirth lost lens. Like, I needed somebody who knew exactly what I was saying. That's broadened a little bit now. And now, something really interesting is what I'm finding is that now, being a mother to living babies, I still parent with a lost lens. I probably will always do life with a viewpoint that comes from loss. I mean, how could I not? It's changed a lot of things about me. Now, one thing I will say is that now I'm starting to entertain relationships with people who don't have a lost lens, because sometimes I feel like I'd like to take it off, but I really don't think I can. I have not been able to take the lenses off yet. It's like everything I see, whether it's words to a song, lyrics to a song, they just hit different. Plots to movies. Now, if anybody loses somebody in that movie, I'm thinking about the mom. Immediately thinking about the mother. If there's baby loss in the movie, nope, I'm not going to be able to do it. I can't do it. Commercials. You just view things. Who wrote this commercial? Where'd this come from? And it's people saying things like what they feed their kids, how the kid sleeps, where they're, how they play, and how they parent. You just kind of go, pregnancy. Pregnancy after loss is only viewed through a loss lens. You handle it because of your loss. The way that you do life is because of your loss. Mm-hmm. And I honestly, though, there are some negative things to that. Yeah, am I fearful a lot more? Yes. Am I anxious a lot more? Yes. Like I said, intrusive thoughts more? Yes. But my lens also comes from a deeper and profound understanding of what kind of life, like the meaningful things in life more now. That I am now unapologetic in how I live my life. That's coming from loss. I'm unapologetic in the way that I handle other people's losses. That comes from loss. Like the way that I handle my relationships comes from loss. The way that I look at things now, I want quality time with special people. I don't want toxicity. I don't want things that drain me mentally, emotionally, and physically. I don't want anything that hinders the healing process or how I need my life to be now that my son is dead. I don't want this life. I did not sign up for this shit. No way. Realizing I could not go back to my old life and the person I was a devastating realization. Me thinking, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to go to grief therapy. I'm going to work with my trauma. I'm going to get some good meds. I'm going to answer my questions. I'm going to have conversation. I'm going to do great. And then I'm going to go back to how things were. That does not happen. So learning who Kat 2.0 has been a journey, because I'm not there. I mean, it's always going to be a journey learning who you are now, but embracing 2.0, accepting that everything is coming from a lens with loss, being okay with that, and then learning how to react to how I feel, if I react at all, now that I'm looking at life differently. That's essentially where I'm kind of at with this loss lens thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love, well, first of all, you described it perfectly, and I love that you brought up, like, there's two sides of it, like, I didn't want this, I don't want it still, like, I wish I didn't live with it, but you're so, you're thankful that you can live unapologetically now. It's almost like, yeah, this sounds icky to say, but it's almost freeing. Like an excuse. Yeah, like to live unapologetically, it is totally freeing. This analogy popped into my head, and I'm going to describe it, and I hope it makes sense, because I was like, how can I put this in a really practical sense for people? And so I was thinking about this, and I was like, it's kind of like having like a broken arm. Like everything you would do, you would go into every situation thinking about your broken arm, like, because it doesn't function like a normal working arm. So when you get in the car to drive, let's say, before you even step into the vehicle, you have to think to yourself, okay, how am I going to do this with one arm? Or, before you go, I don't know, grocery shopping or do laundry or whatever it is, like whatever you're doing, you don't have to remind yourself like, oh shoot, I forgot I have a broken arm. Like after a little while, your brain is just going to start to see the world and automatically tell you how to navigate things with that broken arm. Mm-hmm. And so and probably to the point where after your arm heals, you'll probably have to start doing things, or your brain will start to have to remind yourself like, oh yeah, my arm isn't broken anymore. Like you'll go to do things like as if you had a broken arm. And so my point, the way that relates to like the loss lens is like, it's the way that you view every situation. You literally can't, if you have a broken arm, you can't do this as if you had a functioning arm, because you literally don't have one. And so the reason I want to put that in such a practical sense is because I would say, if you know a griever of any kind, not just stillbirth, the biggest thing you can do for them to show them that you care about their loss, or you just want to be a part of their life, or their story, to help them through a tragic time, or honestly just be someone that they can feel safe and comfortable around, because that's a lot harder than you would think, is to learn how to see through a loss lens. Everything you view is from the point of view of having lost the person that they lost. Like pretend it's like that broken arm, and when you're with them, like remember that everything they have to do, they do with a broken arm. For example, this is silly, but if they bend down to pick up a heavy box, what would you likely do? Like, oh, I got that for you. It just, but so in their terms of whatever their loss is, and for us, stillbirth, like that is how we live our lives. And so putting on that lens is the most helpful thing you can do. And it's not an exact fix. Like if you haven't experienced their loss, you'll never really be able to quite understand or grasp what every day, the ins and outs is like. Like you just can't. You can only really earn that loss lens badge if you've really, if you've lost someone in a profound or devastating way yourself, you know. But a lot of people don't even try. I have this good friend. This story is like crazy to me. She lost her teenage son, and she told me a story once about one of her best friends. They were hanging out one day shortly after my friend's son had died, and my friend said it just seemed so awkward all of a sudden, like since her son had died, and it was very obvious to her that her best friend she wasn't trying to like get on her knees and like be with her in the pain, you know. She was just being very awkward and very kind of standoffish, and so this other person looked at my friend and said, "I'm sorry, I just don't know how to be around you anymore," and then basically just left that day, and they've had no relationship ever since. And like, how crazy. This was one of her closest friends. But there are a lot of people out there like that, and they might not come out and say it in such a brutal way, but that is basically how they act. Like, I don't know how to be around you. And instead of trying to learn or put on that lens, like, I'm just not going to be around you. And unfortunately, this lens it's something that we can't remove. Like you said, like, I don't know if I can remove this. I don't know if I can take this off no matter how hard you try. And even more, unfortunately, it ends up being a huge point of contention in even the best relationships. It tears them apart. And I know I tried describing to my friends and family, like early on in my loss, I can't unknow what I now know. I have entered into an entire new world where everything looks completely different now. At any point, you can step into my world to see what it looks like, but you're always able to step back into yours. But I don't have that option. I can't step back into your world of not knowing what this is like. Unless I do, you know, unless I erase my memory, I can't do that. So it's like, if this relationship is going to work or continue at all, like, you have to come into my world. You know what I mean? Like, I literally can't come to yours. You have to come to me.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, secondary losses are relationships, friendships, family members, whatever it may be. You know, one thing you have to realize is that you can tell people till you're blue in the face what you need, what you want, how you want to honor your baby, what you're going through, trying to get them to understand. And their reaction is going to be what tells you how you're going to move forward with the relationship. It has nothing to do with what you want. It's their reaction to it. Now, people can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. And that means if they have not been able to get to the deepest parts of what hurts them, makes them sad, things that scare them, they're not going to be able to show up for you in your darkness. And that's on them. That's not on you. But we have to find out the hard way when they act like jerks, you know? And then some people just simply can't be around it because maybe they are pregnant, or maybe they have fears, or maybe when they had a significant loss, somebody patted them on the back and said, get right back out there. You know, everything's going to be fine. So they feel like that's how you handle loss. You know, they were coached a little differently in their losses. So, you know, we never really know where people are coming from, but I don't know if I expect people to put on a loss lens or try to see through my eyes, but I just want them to not forget that that's how I see. I am not the old person. Do not expect me to return to who I am with the same perspective, same values, same everything, same insight. It's different now. So you're either going to accept who I am now and move forward in this journey with me, or you can be stuck in the past and wish I could come back and, you know, just walk away from this new version of me. And I got to be honest, you know, life's dirty and it comes at you fast, man, especially the older we get. Baby death is dark. Child death is awful. All of this is horrendous, okay? It's what nightmares are made of, and it's probably mom's biggest fear. And to be a walking nightmare and a big reminder that life can slap you right in the face no matter how good you are of a person, no matter how hard you try, and no matter what you do to try to control it, life can still hit you right in the face with something brutal and horrible, and then look at you while you're on the ground and say, get up and keep going. And we do. We function like normal people. Inside, we are screaming. Our skin is on fire. We can't even hear what you're saying. Our brain is racing, if it's even moving at all. And the amount of trauma and grief that the impact it has on you physically, your body, your brain. There are books about this. Y'all, look it up. We are literally operating differently. And the biggest problem is when people just don't know how to handle that, and they won't do a simple Google search on, is this normal or not? What do I do? It's very easy to do. And when they turn it on you and say, you're too sad, you're the one who I can't be around, you need to get over it, where's my old friend back? Guess what? There's the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass on the way out, because you are not going to be good for my healing journey right now. The best advice I could give in a situation like this is to simply say, I need to shelf this relationship for now until I am through a certain phase in my life. Because once detrimental things are said and done, there's no going back. They're not salvageable. I've lost so many relationships because they're just not salvageable now. They didn't show up, or they didn't know what to say, and they, it was awkward. They called me selfish. Like, get out of here. If you're hurting more than you're helping, you're not going to be good for this situation. And we're sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry for my loss. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm sad now. I'm so sorry my baby died. No, I refuse to apologize. It's something that happened to my baby. My baby's life ended. That was his fate. I'm his mother. My life didn't end. I'm still here, but my child's did. His fate was death. If you have not been through that or are going through that, I don't really need to hear from you on how I should be handling this. That's what I mean by unapologetic. Because what happens when we listen to people and we get fearful of what they think, say, or do regarding our loss, and we start acting on what we think they think or will say or do, we will have regrets on what we're doing here. We will pent up all this, and it'll come exploding out of us, and we will have regrets on how we honor our babies' lives. And these people, I don't expect them to close their eyes and imagine what it's like to give birth and push out a silent baby and hold their dead body. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody's going to try to envision that. But can you please just for 1 second remember that I did that? That's why I'm the person that I am. I'm not even that horrible of a person. Yeah, I spiral more frequently. I got some road rage. I'm spending way too much money on therapy. But I still find myself being more compassionate and empathetic and wanting good out of my life, even in the midst of all this dark. So remember this. This is where we're coming from, people. That was a rant and a half. Were you recording that?
Yes,
Shit.
perfectly put. Couldn't think of a better way to conclude, wrap up.
Yeah,
no, seriously.
yeah.
And I could keep going, but I won't, because we've been talking for over an hour now. But seriously, perfectly put. I couldn't have said it any better. And I appreciate all of that wisdom and just I appreciate just being so real and raw. That is what these women need to hear. We need to say these things out loud. The thoughts are in their head, and making them feel seen and heard is so important. But really quick before we end, I just want to give you an opportunity to just share where my audience can, follow you on social media or any other outlets that you want to put out there right now for everybody to hear.
Right on. Okay. So first off, I've created something called lostlink.com. This is a search platform for you to find moms in your area. You can search by your local town, moms with similar losses or moms of all loss, whatever it may be. So you can connect with them and get together for coffee or a hug or shopping or a cocktail, whatever it is. You can also search internationally. It is an international platform. I find this to be super helpful because community is what saved me. And I needed to talk to mothers who had specific experiences. So you can actually search specific experiences and find them. Like, my second baby was born prematurely, and I needed to know what it was like to be in the NICU for 5 weeks. That was really helpful to find moms who knew what to do because they kind of coached me through it. So throughout all these phases of life, you can continuously search for mamas on here that will help you through whatever phase or whatever question you have regarding whether it's pregnancy or babies or whatever it may be, loss, whatever it is. Because again, loss lens, I only want to know what that mom's doing as far as, her facials and Botox and fillers and stuff. What's this mom? What'd you do to your face? Because I only care what you did, not someone else. Because you know what death is. I also have a podcast called At a Total Loss. You can find that on Spotify, Amazon, Google, and Apple, wherever you can listen to podcasts. I also have a website, thecatherinelazar.com. And you can, is it thecatherinelazar.com? Hold on. No, it's just Katherine Lazar. I do that all the time. I have Katherine Lazar as my handle because everything else was taken. I had to do it. So
KatherineLazar.com. You can get in touch with me there, and you can also listen to the podcast there. I do have Instagram, and that is the Katherine Lazar. I'm on the TikTok, but not really. Look for me on there. Message me and be like, you need to post more if you really want to see me on TikTok. I also have a YouTube channel at a Total Loss channel. So not all the podcasts, but most of my podcast episodes are on there. You could see the crazy facial expressions and you can see some of my guests. On there, you guys can find information from specialists in the space as far as placental specialists, cord specialists. I even have like medical malpractice specialists, therapists, mental health experts, and just all lost mama stories I'm trying to cover all different types of losses, but there are a lot. So I'm still adding to it. We just hit the 100th episode a couple of weeks ago. Me. And I'm still going. So that's how y'all can find me.
Okay, great. Awesome. Katherine, thank you so much for being here. You exceeded my expectations. It was such a pleasure. Thank you all who listened. If you enjoyed this episode, a positive review is always much appreciated. Don't forget to hit subscribe to be alerted when new episodes are released. That's all we have for today. Signing off for now, your hope dealer, Emmy Smaz.